Welcome to the Cherish and Conquer podcast, the show dedicated to celebrating female entrepreneurs' strength, resilience, and innovation. Be inspired by stories of women and what they cherish to help them conquer against all odds. Every other week, you will learn from remarkable women on how they navigate challenges, uphold their values, and create sustainable success. And now, here's your host, Jim Rembach.
Hello and welcome to the Cherish and Conquer podcast. I think you're going to love this conversation as much as I am looking forward to it, because I have the opportunity to have one of those people who, you know, when you find somebody that you just connect with totally, and you have similar and shared passions, and you want their different perspectives because you just find so much connection with them. I have that person on the show with me, Ilene Marcus. Ilene, welcome.
Thank you, Jim. So nice to be here.
Now, you and I actually had to stop talking and start recording because we were having so much fun.
And that's the way it should be. Always fun.
Absolutely.
You're on the path with having fun.
Absolutely. So I'm looking forward to getting the opportunity to have everybody be part of our conversations. And to kind of get us going here is if you can tell everyone a little bit about how you are making a difference in people's lives with the work that you do.
So let's go back to go forward. Very quickly, I really started on the social service side of things, right? Helping people who are in tough situations over the years. And I'm getting to the end of my career, my 60th decade, my sixth decade. I moved to economic development, which is basically helping people create businesses, helping counties, towns, villages create a sustainable tax base, because businesses pay taxes and that pays municipal services. So moving to the other side of the equation. Now, I grew up in government and nonprofit. And what happens in government and nonprofit is you bootstrap. You know, you build everything from the ground up with very little. And what do you know? When I started to go on the economic development side, I found that's my skill, whether it's a business, you know, for profit, it's the same thing. You need to figure out how to make your model sustainable and how to actually lean into your purpose and your money and not be ashamed of wanting to make money to help your family, your community, yourself. So that's what I do. I help entrepreneurs and small businesses take their ideas, scale them, and really figure out where their niche is so how they can grow.
Well, as you say that, I could dare to say that. Well, let me tell you a little story about somebody who was wanting to do that a few years back, and wanting to make a difference in their community. And then I asked, which I guess was the dreaded question. I'm like, "How do you intend to fund this?" And she just stared at me, went in total silence, and I'm like, the reality of everything is that we need resources in regards to, revenue, even if we are a nonprofit, in order for us to make a difference in our community. Would you say that that is probably one of the most difficult things for you to help people to overcome, is that concept of I need revenue, I need income, and it's not all about because I have a good message that some people are going to throw money at me?
It is a big switch, and especially talking about female entrepreneurs, to talk about money. I always say to people, it is not shameful to say, I want to make money. I want you to have passion behind that purpose, some kind of sustainability and help for our planet, and mission that's driven by more than money. But it is okay, because when you talk about money and want to make money, you are helping, as I said, yourself. You're funding people who work for you, who are keeping, their children safe and feeding them. You are having that, big butterfly impact that goes out into the world. So yes, for female entrepreneurs, it's even harder. And having those conversations early on, when I started this business years ago, it was all about the incorporation. I'm always like, no, you talk to your accountant first. Forget the lawyer, you talk to your accountant first. We used to call it the financial runway. I don't know what the correct term is now. How much can I not work, or how much money do I have? How far down the road, the runway, right? A plane needs a certain amount of area to lift off. how much runway do I have that I can self-fund or I can tolerate? I don't have to work for 6 months. I have saved a year. I have this much money. So I start there with the financial runway. And, an aside is I do a lot of pro bono work on different incubators, starting entrepreneurs, and sometimes I have some other mentors working with me and say, we don't need to know what their child support is. I'm like, we absolutely need to know. We need to know everything about them and their entire picture so we can help them. Will you have enough money? Can you get off the runway? Can you lift this off the air? So, and I can talk what we do next after the runway, but I couldn't agree with you more. There's a lot of stuff out there for women about it's my money, this badass money. But the reality is people still don't want to talk about it. They don't want to share. And let me tell you, they do not want to put it down on paper and look at it.
You bring up an interesting point, because I also, part of this, I think maybe, societal apprehension or maybe anxiety also comes from what we've done in our society in regards to, especially when we refer to, nonprofits and things like that, is that, they're not allowed, to pay the people who are actually making it happen. So there was actually a really interesting TED Talk done by, I want to say his name was Dan Pallotta. And he had mentioned about the millions and millions of dollars that his charity had raised in order to make an impact on their cause. And I can't recall what it is off the top of my mind, but anyway, they raised literally millions. And when you do that, you have to do a whole lot of promotion to get people to participate. It's just the way that it is. Otherwise, they're not going to find you. It's not a build it and they will come. And so they spent a lot of money on marketing. And so it was fueling amounts of revenue that no other charitable organization had ever made for that particular cause. But then media started saying how much they were spending on marketing, and basically it wiped them out. And so we have this social stigma associated with this, which could be part of this contributing factor of, well, we don't want to talk about that. But the fact is I think hopefully times have changed since Dan had gone through that particular experience. But I would dare to say, creating and building that confidence and backbone to know that you're going to meet this and how do you respond to this, gives people confidence to be able to move forward. How do you help and recommend that they actually get prepared for these types of conversations?
Yeah, I wish I'd known the guy, because if I've learned anything, and you just gave me a great idea for a TED Talk, which I will have to think about. If I have learned anything, it's that, right, the real difference between nonprofit and for-profit is in nonprofit, right, you do get exempt from some taxes. There's no rules about what money people can't earn. The basic rule is they can't be a profit. It has to go back into the core mission. But they are so the same on customer acquisition, on eyeballs, on how crowded the social media marketing space is. That's exactly right. If you can't spend the money on customer acquisition, donor acquisition, you're never going to get to the place that you want to be able to help people. So I think the first thing is setting up, I love the word rubric. I don't know why it's my word of the day, setting up a rubric that really, because in nonprofit, what we do is we measure you different than EBITDA, right? In business, we measure you on how much do you spend on your cause and how much do you spend on administration. And marketing goes into an admin expense. So the idea is to figure out that marketing right away is knowledge, information. It's part of the programming. It's not part of the administrative sense. So if you change your rubric to look at it like we're marketing to get donors, no, we're educating on the cause. We are telling people what it's about. We're disseminating information. We're not just marketing. You've already shifted that balance. And you have to be real about it and give real information, but you've already shifted that equation where that comes from, the IRS and Charity Navigator and all those things. I'm sure their marketing, they were spending, 50% on indirect costs. So if they had coined that a little differently, thought about it in the way of education, knowledge transfer, information, training, they could have maybe not had that problem.
I think those are excellent points. And part of that, is that, we have to make sure that we position things in the proper way by which it doesn't bring scrutiny upon us. And that's, that is an artistic acumen that I think everybody could benefit from in regards to learning when you start talking about, business, especially like, we're talking about women entrepreneurs and building their business. So let me ask you, what inspired you to start your own business, and how does it align with the concept of cherish and conquer?
Myrina.ai draws inspiration from the legendary Amazonian Queen Marina, embodying resilience and strategic brilliance. With our AI-powered SaaS platform, we equip women-led businesses for success in the evolving landscape of AI and business automation. As a partner and community for female-led businesses, Myrina.ai maximizes their potential using AI while providing essential support. Ready to amplify your success using AI with like-minded ladies? Register or learn more at Myrina.ai. And now, back to our interview.
So, like most people, what do they say? Necessity is the mother of invention. I talk about it very freely, which I did not 10 years ago when we first met, Jim. I started my business because my boss, I was working for a huge nonprofit. I was fired on page A1 of the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal because my boss, in a social purpose, helping low-income people nonprofit, was skimming off the top and went to jail. And so there I was, part of the collateral damage. Now, I had a lot of raving fans and followers. I was the chief of staff, but the bottom line was, I'm the chief of staff. How did I not know this guy was doing it? We can go through that no one knew, right? Until there was certain rules that were changed and insurance became public and you had to see what the premiums were and what was being paid. But the bottom line is that when you're managing a $160 million organization, right? He's doing his job, I'm doing mine. So what inspired me was I had a kid in college, right? I was living alone. I had a lifestyle and I was fired publicly. I wasn't getting another job. Got a lot of consulting gigs, but very quickly I found that the consulting I got was not what I wanted to do. It was what other people wanted to do. I do, because I have dealt in that Shark Tank, which has a different connotation now because everybody loves Shark Tank, but, a lot of crisis work, a lot of quick, I've been waiting for this government grant for 2 years and now I got 3 months to hire 100 people. How do I scale? So I did it out of necessity. After the first year and a half, 2 years, I quickly learned I don't want to just be paying the bills. That's not what I'm about. I want to be mission driven. So cherish and conquer. What is important to me? It's important to me that a CEO maintains their balance and, maintains their vision and actually really helps to lift up their staff instead of hammer them down to make the business work. So I became very invested in, you say it's all about relationships in business, and it is about how we show up. My first real book was Managing Annoying People. I was that annoying superstar that you needed me on your team because I was going to give you those 100 employees with procedures, mechanisms, onboarding in 3 months. But boy, was I going to drive you crazy doing it. So I really wanted to help CEOs understand the value of, if you are building something to really make a difference in the world, how do you drill that down to your staff when it's an economic contract and you're paying them? So that was the shift when I started working with people who I realized that's the economics of it. That's the money of it, right? That's the, we want everyone to have an income and be self-sufficient. And, the CEO has a the leadership team, important role in making that sustainable. So does that fully answer? So that's how I made that switch to what is it that I value? My latest gig was working for an organization that helps families with sick children, large families, when a child gets a horrific diagnosis and they need time in the hospital and they have 7 other children at home. And what do they do? And the whole lifestyle's changed and, they're barely making means. And, and create mission, but how do you keep those employees happy? How do you keep that, machine oiled? All of those things are very important in keeping the CEO healthy.
Well, I think, thank you for sharing that. And you, it's kind of interesting when you start talking about, you're trying to be a disruptor, but the way that you were doing it, saying that you were one of those annoying people. So, what have you learned in regards to the ability to make a difference from your youth to where you are now?
Yeah, that's a big one, right? I've learned that there is always more than one bite at the apple. Meaning, one of my skills, and I think a lot of women actually, because we multitask, have this skill, is that we know how to create urgency. We know how to, make this important and say this has to happen, because we're used to, like, you got to feed the kids, got to get the toilet paper, got to take care of my mother, got to go to work. We are used to balancing a lot of things. So we create urgency. But I would think that's it. This is urgent. Got to take care of it. Move on to the next. I didn't realize that some things, I like to say, there's another bite at the apple. I don't have to always win that argument right now. That might come up again. This isn't the most important thing. So, really that scale of like, I was someone who was, if the scale was 1 to 10, I was always operating on 10, which made me annoying. So, how do you really, I don't know what the right word is, triade or modulate, what's truly an emergency, what's truly not, and what you can wait for, that I will have another chance to address it. It's not my only time. So that was a big one for me.
Well, okay. You had mentioned something about building a model. And, is that part of the process by which you can more effectively manage it?
My rubric?
The rubric? Yeah. So is that a way by which you're saying, okay, I'm going to have another bite at this apple because this is my rubric?
Yeah, actually, my consulting practice is called aligned workplace. And the idea is that you align your time, money, and narrative and energy. So that's exactly right. I create a rubric of what is our mission, how are we spending our time, how are we spending our money, and what's important in that. So, I do that for organizations and go in and help them to really realize. Now, the kicker there is very often what they think is the most important thing is probably not that important, right? It's, you're smiling. You know what I'm talking about. It's getting them to really reframe, how do I build my sales force, or how do I build my frontline staff, to understand this mission? It's a lot about drilling down. That's why I say my work, when I thought about what I want to cherish and conquer, was really about helping CEOs really communicate. And, I have a new saying that is professionalism is about how you drive the work forward. It's not about your skill set. It's not about what school you went to. It's not about how well you write an email. Those things matter, but they are basic now business competencies. Professionalism is how you drive the work forward. So laying that out in a rubric, where's our time? Where's our money? Where's our energy? So the example I use all the time, companies say, oh, we have such a beautiful training policy. We let our people go to this and that. But when you look at the training policy and you look at the actual money they're spending on it, and you look at the actual number of employees engaging, you say, you're not really spending money on your training program. That's why you're really not getting people that are getting enhanced understanding or skills or feeling loyal to you. So it's aligning all those things that does set out those priorities and where you should be. Because no matter what, the most important thing is going to be the engagement of your staff. If you don't have staff, if we haven't learned that during COVID, right? If I can't have staff and hire staff, I can't have a company.
Well, even when you're saying that, even if I'm a solopreneur, now my rubric, shifts a little bit. But I may have, vendors that I partner with. I may have 1099s that are working for me. I may have, and then there's the whole customer component. I mean, you still have a situation where it's, being more, I don't want to say the word is selfless, but being more, them focused, so that we can essentially accomplish what we've set out to accomplish. Like, conquer the universe and have our mission, be right. Impacting others, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I like to call it more ecosystem focused, right? Because an ecosystem, I talk a lot about the difference between an ecosystem and a community. In a community, I now live in a very small community, right? No stoplights even in Western Mass. And, we all go to the transfer station, which we call the dump, and, put our garbage in, and you see your neighbors, and, so we sit on committees and we do this and that. But, we kind of are neighbors, and, we each do our own thing. We do some things together. that's great. But in an ecosystem, like, we are dependent on each other, right? Like, what I do really impacts another. So that, I think, is more the model versus community. We coexist and we share some services and we pay in. As a business owner, a solopreneur, you are not alone, right? Work is a team sport. It is. And you have to figure out, right, how to build those relationships so that they're strong, so that your ultimate goal of more business, helping more people, getting your word out is elevated.
Okay. So what advice do you have for women when it comes to business relationships and networking, and how has this advice impacted you?
Well, this is one of the big changes from being, a newbie to being an older person. I used to really stick to the business thing. We're going to bond on the business thing. And, Jim and I were actually talking about this before the show. Now I am happy to show the weirdo I am, right? I am saying it on your show. I happen to love Hallmark Channel. I would have never admitted that 30 years ago. I'm a hardcore. I'm managing 10,000 people. I do this. I yell at the mayor. I'm not going to say I go home and watch the Hallmark Channel. But now I have really learned what speaks to me, right? Like, is it your shoes? Is it your coat? Like, bond with people about who you are. That is the most important thing, because you know what? They're going to learn that anyway. And if you're doing, excuse the expression, your life right, that alignment of who you are, how it shows up in your work, how it transfers to other people, that's what you really want, because it's your authentic you. It's your ideas and vision and your help and your guidance that you're trying to give them. So don't shy away. Don't think, I thought I had to be so business and so this and so that. No, you don't want to be a lunatic, but, at the same time, show who you are. Like, I have no problem saying, I saw that on Touched by an Angel last week, and let me tell you the story and how it relates to you. People look at you, but you know what? They know I'm being authentic. So I think that how we present ourselves, I think, especially since COVID, my advice is that compartmentalization of my work life, my home life, my hobbies. We don't have time not to roll it all into one, right? We don't have time not to be who we are in everything we do. And it shows up. I work with a lot of people who are managing complex organizations, and it's really hard sometimes to get them to look at how they do it. And I always use cooking analogies, because there are people like my sister, we won't talk about her, but my sister who, if she's making a meal, first she makes the appetizer. Then she makes the next thing. Then she makes the next thing. So even if she needs onions for all three things she's cooking, she slices the onion at the time she's making it. Versus me, who looks at the whole menu and preps everything. So, it looks like nothing's ready and I'm cooking. I got, a lot of pots boiling, but nothing cooking. And then voila, the meal is ready. So you have to know. So that kind of teaching people that way. What kind of manager are you? What kind of scaler? Are you going at it one at a time? And what's that impact on your staff when you're spoon feeding them literally and then saying, go back and get the onions, right? Instead of like me, who's coordinating everything. So I think you have to really integrate like who you are into what you're doing. If not, you're not being honest with yourself.
You bring up a really interesting point in regards to putting people in the right place for success. Even that, part of that is a self, actualization, activity that needs to occur as well. If you're not good at something, that's okay, right? But using it to the detriment of whomever you're trying to impact, including, yourself, is, I think, oftentimes where the problem comes into play. It's like, look, that just ain't my thing, right? I need to leave that to somebody else. And I had this conversation yesterday with somebody who was talking to me about reprogramming something on the computer. And for me, I'm like, hey, you give me a checklist. I can follow a checklist. I can do that with no problem. I said, but if you're telling me to do it from scratch, I said, I'm not going to be able to figure it out. And she goes, well, I can teach you that. I'm like, no, wait a minute. And that ain't my thing. I'd rather hire somebody to take care of that.
I don't need to learn that one.
Yeah, I don't want to invest time in trying to figure, this particular thing out. And then she goes, oh, well, then I'm hireable. I'm like, let's talk.
At the core of Myrina.ai is customization and the innovative AI you process, which uses AI to infuse your personality, style, and vision into cloning you and growing your business. Are you ready to amplify your success using AI with a community of fellow female entrepreneurs? Go to Myrina.ai today. And now, back to the interview.
So you're hitting on two things. One is the ability to find the right people, right? Which as a solopreneur, as a woman, right, as anyone, giving up that control and trusting others. But you're also talking about, one of my signature talks is about how to attract and retain top talent. And in that talk, I talk about three types of employees. You have employees who are power driven, money, prestige. You have employees who are mission driven, the idea, the research, the community. And you have employees who are just job driven, right? They do a good job for you. They might even have a skill set, but they are 9 to 5ers if that's the time they want to go home and have their life. So how you reward each one of them differs. A simple example is the person that's 9 to 5er, if you invite them to cocktail hours, this and that, they come begrudgingly. They don't want to do it. You think that you're doing a nice thing and inviting them out to dinner. They want to be home at their yoga class, whatever it is. You invite the power broker to go to that. He or she is running. The research-driven person, you want them to go to conferences or represent you at different things. You have to really think about what motivates each of your staff and what you're giving to them. And that also puts them in the right place, saves the bandwidth. And, now like that you hired this person to do whatever it was on your computer, that gives you more time and energy to do what you need. So we have to think about that for the people we work with too.
Well, I mean, as you say that, I'm even starting to think about that from a marketing and selling perspective. If I want to, make sure that I'm attracting the right, customers, I need to know what's driving them. So it's the psychographics of my ideal customer. What is it, right? Is it that they are the power broker person? Is it that, to me, I think it aligns in so many different ways when you start talking about the ecosystem of being successful.
I think so. And, and there's a corollary to that, if I may, not to give too much stuff. But once you figure out which type of person they are, then you have to figure out how they interpret information. And I say there are basically 3 ways that people interpret information. The head, right? The intellect, the data, what goes into it. The head, the delta, the change. This is the way it was. This is the way it will be. What's the change? And then, of course, the heart, right? So, I talk about one of my clients runs this upscale thrift shop, right? So the heart is all about, the head is all about like, this is the poundage that we save in fabric and environmental, and this is the amount of clothes we save, and this is the people we serve, and this is what we're doing to decrease the carbon footprint. The change is, this is, how people come in. This is how they go out. They didn't know how to dress. They didn't know what to do. Now with our clothes, boom, they have mommy to work clothes. They know what to do. We're saving time in their life, right? And then the heart is like, these women that come to us now, they love their wardrobes. They love their job. They get up in the morning with purpose. They know what to do. So which one, I don't know if that was the best example I gave, but which one of those, once you decide why are they in it, are they going to relate to? And often it's 2 times, right? Like I'm definitely a change and a heart person. I love a good heartstring, but I like to know, I'm a numbers person. So I like to know what's the difference? Like, what did I put in and what did I get out, right? What changed in what we're doing?
To me, like you just said, that is an internal and an external, you want to call it a rubric and for this. It right. Definitely, it applies. So thank you for sharing that. You had a lot of things for me just kind of resonate as you were sharing that, so, and this is again why I love talking to you. Okay. So when you start talking about your core values and ethics and where they are right now, how do you ensure that your business practices align with those?
I wish I could tell you it was a one and done. It's an everyday practice. I have to look at my calendar. I have to look at my clients. I have to look at how I'm spending my day and saying, is this of service? Is this mission driven for me? You know, my values right now are kindness, definitely is a huge value about being out in the world and spreading that. It is definitely about compassion. And it's definitely about, you know, the real message I'm working on lately is really like, you know, you know, it's the old, you don't know someone till you walk in their shoes, right? Like, so you know, you make an assumption. You know, I see a lot of this in teams, and especially since half remote and this and that, you know, people make assumptions about who someone is, not only on a first meeting, but because of one thing they say or one thing they do or one annoying habit they have. And how do you get them to understand, you know, there are really many sides from every perspective. It doesn't mean they're all right. And, you know, especially in the world I work in, the boss eventually is going to have to decide which you want to come down on. But how do you really get that 360-degree view? So I really, a lot of times I'll be in the middle of something and I have to say, well, why am I going down this rabbit hole? This is not what I do anymore. This is not what I do anymore. That is a great idea. And this company definitely needs that, but that is not why I was hired. And that's not what I do, not my job. So let me pull back. So I think it's an everyday practice. And you know, people talk about this, putting the Post-it note right on your computer, kindness, compassion. You know, for me, it's 360 perspective. How do I get people, before they shoot from the hip, before they react, before they dig their heels in, to really think about the other you know, what other people are thinking? And that's also one of my other favorite talks in attracting and retaining people is, we do a lot in teaching people about, like, here's your role and responsibilities and how you fit in. What we don't do a good job in is thinking about what those other people worry about. So back to what you were saying, what do my customers want? So, you know, like how the CEO makes snap decisions because they're worrying about risk, market, you know, customer, supply chain, where the frontline worker isn't really worrying about that. They're like, can I serve this customer and can I get home on time? Right, kind of thing. And is the cash register going to be right? So all of those things about what is in the other person's head and starting to think about that, not that you have to worry about it, but when you start to understand, oh, you know, like I am actually in this small little town, the chair of the town finance committee. People come to me with ideas all the time, and I have to explain to them that is a great idea, but what does that do to the fire department in this? Like, here's the budget, here's the, you know, amount of revenue we raise as a town. So this idea has to, you know, it has to have an interplay. And they look at me and say, oh, other people just said no to me. They didn't explain that. And I'm like, great, so we can work on it, but then we have to think about a revenue stream or what we're going to replace to make that happen. So I think that really helps people to look at each other and, you know, like have that compassion and really think about the entire view. Did that make sense? Because I kind of went off a little.
Well, I mean, no, I mean, so for me, it drew connections with spending 10 years on our homeowners association board, where people would, you know, bring all kinds of different ideas. And I'm like, hey, that's fantastic. And sometimes I'd be like, thanks for volunteering for doing that.
Voluntold.
Good job. Way to nominate yourself. And then oftentimes things don't go nowhere when that happens. And then,
right.
You know, and then you deal with really interesting things like what people were talking about, you know, like pets that are, you know, not leashed, you know, especially like a cat, right? Their neighbor's cat's walking all over the car. You need to do something like that about that. And I'm like, no, you need to call the police.
And you need to have a conversation with your neighbor.
Well,
and you need to, right.
You know, well, that's part of it. It's like, well, you know, if they're not willing to talk to somebody else, you know, about it, of authority, which isn't us, you know,
right, exactly.
And so that whole expectation setting thing, you know, as you started talking about, you know, what do we expect, you know, even when I think sometimes we make assumptions and don't say anything in regards to what we perceive people might be thinking about. And for me, I see that as seed planting opportunities. It's like, you know, so when we're talking about this situation, other people may be thinking, and whether they're thinking it about, I want them to think this way, or if they do end up thinking that way, I want to make sure that they understand where it's coming from, origins, expectations. I mean, sometimes you have to be a planter of all of that versus a perceiver of all of that.
Yes. And I love that. And as a change agent, right? As people who are put on this earth to like spread our mission of growth and understanding. I love that term, Jim, seed planting, right? You're starting to get them. You want things to take root. You want them to see it from a different perspective. You want those values to grow inside of them. I think that's exactly right. And I think that in this bite-sized world, it's become really important to slow things down and say, wait, let me tell you why we do that. Here's the history. Here's why. And it doesn't have to be a lengthy, thing, but sometimes we need to go backwards to go forward. And I think we forget that, we're so right now, especially after COVID, we're so careful about our time and our supply chain and our money. And, we want, we have visions and, we all have this new like bucket list that we're working on. And yet really sometimes the best thing you can do is really slow down and say, wait, why like you asked the question, why am I doing? That's why I say, sometimes it is an hour a day. Sometimes it is every day. I wake up every morning and I look at my calendar and I say, what do I have to do for my life, right? Call the doctor, call the whatever, the duck company to clean out, the ducks. What do I have to do for life administration? What are the other things on my calendar working towards my mission of helping others excel and scale their businesses? I have to ask that every day.
I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, it is a constant. I mean, when you have a fast pace and moving environment that's around all of us, you have to, get grounded, and it has to be more frequent than we think because we're getting pulled in so many different directions. And like you talked about, I mean, for females, that's probably even to a higher degree. I tell my wife all the time, I said, you just went over 5 different things. I said, I'm a guy. I can't do that. I'm like, write it down, put it in my calendar. Otherwise it ain't going to happen.
Right.
She goes, what do you mean?
You want to be spoon fed. No, I'm joking.
Yeah. For certain things. Yeah. I'm like, if you don't,
we're making a buffet, right?
Yeah. I can't drink from that fire hose that you can easily tame. Okay. So, can you share a story of a time when you had to pivot or adapt your business strategy? You hit it on it a little bit, but I want you to dig on it a little bit deeper, please.
My growing my own business. So I talked about when I made the pivot from just accepting jobs, because that we talked about making money. I needed to make money. I couldn't be shy about it. So lately, I just went through another pivot, and I'm very excited about this. I have been training and consulting, mostly in organizations that have crisis. And I got to tell you, since it's not an advertisement, but since I got this Apple Watch, I can really see when my blood pressure is elevating, and I'm getting older and the stress. So I have really pivoted now, so for a long time it was about going into companies help. And I've really pivoted now into more speaking and training. I find that I want to really be able to give them something that they can take and stick with it instead of changing it for them. And I really prefer not just to work with the leadership team, but to really be training down to the staff, because that's where the disconnect happens. So that was a big pivot for me in terms of, I've always been able to take, 3-month, 6-month clients and really go in deep with them and not kind of be, like a one-night stand kind of girl. I want to understand your needs, come in and, either train about how to attract and retain that staff, or talk about the alignment of the work and the priorities and how that filters down into the different departments. So I think that, that it's a risk. I mean, I'm nervous about it, but I think for me, as I age and I look at how I want to spend my time, digging in that deep way is becoming a young person's job, if you will. It's as a consultant in those kind of crisis situations, you really are pretty much on call for those 3 months. The other part of it for me, a big pivot is I've been working for a lot of years now, probably 8 years in the entrepreneurial space. I had worked for a startup 12 years ago, but I have been working in the entrepreneurial space, helping people build products, especially in where I live, which is kind of an economically depressed area. How do we create more businesses, more jobs? And I have recently decided to become a founder of a product. And I'm early on in my development, but what a switch to go from the mentor, the consultant, the trainer to now I'm going through the process myself. And I always say, why I was successful in my career early on is because I was a social worker and I had worked in the field and worked in home visits. So I knew the whole business. And even though I had created my company aligned workplace and knew how to create clients and training materials and this, that was kind of, I scaled it to a certain point and did that, but I've never actually created a tangible product. So I'm going through that process right now. And the idea of that is also to be a mouthpiece, to be able to say, I'm 63. It's never too late. You have an idea. Here's what you need. Here's how you do it. Here's how you use your past experience. Here's how you leverage your network. And, people, and I think I have a great network, which I do, but people that I didn't expect show up, or this one introduces me to that one. I don't know if I'm making sense, but becoming a founder of a product is a huge pivot right now from always being a service-based consultancy.
We all wish you the very best. All right, now it's time for our Breakthrough Blitz. And our Breakthrough Blitz is our fast round where you answer a few questions that you already have the answers to in order to help us to be able to break through. Are you ready for the Blitz?
Okay.
All right. Here we go, Ilene. All right. What's your favorite productivity tool or app?
My favorite productivity tool is do what you like the least first. Just get it done and get it out of the way.
What's your favorite way to unwind after a busy day?
Walk my dog. It used to be a glass of vodka, but now it is walk that doggy. Play with the dog, walk with the dog.
If you could have dinner with any female business leader, living or deceased, who would it be?
Oh, that is an easy one for me. That is the founder of Spanx, whose name I am because she, I like to say I was wearing gym shorts under my clothes forever, but I was too ashamed, and she made a business out of it. So I would like to have, I would like to tell her she stole my idea. But she is an amazing woman, if I can remember her name.
That's okay. All right. What's your favorite quote or mantra that keeps you motivated?
My new favorite quote is, just because it's not working doesn't mean it's not working. It's kind of what we talked about in terms of I have to go back several times a day. What's my priority? You have to stay the course. We don't stay the course long enough. We're so ready to quick results. I grew up in the era, I know this is lightning round. I grew up in the era of the encyclopedia. You had to actually take your bicycle to the library and look something up. Now, if I can't ask Google, if I can't ask Siri or Google or Alexa, I don't even want to know. So just because it's not working doesn't mean it's not working. Stay the course.
Very good. All right. What's one piece of advice you'd give to aspiring female entrepreneurs?
Show yourself. Don't hide who you are.
Okay, Ilene, this is my last Breakthrough Blitz question. What's the biggest misconception that people have about being a female entrepreneur, and how do you address that in your own business?
That's a good one. I think the biggest misconception is that they underestimate our financial savvy once we dig into it. I think they underestimate our ability to really understand the mechanics of the business.
Ilene Marcus, as always, fun time. I appreciate the conversation. But can you share with the Cherish and Conquer listeners and watchers how they can get in touch with you?
Yes, I love to be LinkedIn, trying to grow that LinkedIn profile. So Ilene, Ilene Marcus on LinkedIn, or you can you can Google Managing Annoying People or Aligned Workplace, and that's my website.
Ilene Marcus, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom, and we wish you the very best.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks for tuning into the Cherish and Conquer podcast from Marina. Join our community of trailblazing women at community.mirina.ai and get access to exclusive resources, checklists, and guides. If you found value in today's episode, please rate, review, subscribe, and share it across your social platforms. See you soon, and remember, barriers are for breaking.